present recession is the combination of the bursting of a bubble, but also a part of a structural transition. I think one of the choices that the country has to make is, do we want to preserve jobs in areas that were going to be eliminated anyway over time, and particularly areas that grew as a result of the misallocation of investment like housing and finance? And do we want to smooth the transition to this economy of the future in which healthcare, among other things, will be one of the major sources of employment? If we go that way, then there's a case to be made for supplying the demand for these healthcare jobs and public service jobs through the public sector. One could have vouchers that would have a private element to it, but in many cases it might make sense to expand public employment, particularly at the state and local level, in providing these what economists call merit goods like healthcare and education. And one could double the number of school teachers and triple the number of nurses and still have a lot of demand for those services left over. And that's something that goes against the grain of ideology in the United States, which says that the private sector creates jobs, the public sector does not create jobs. In fact, the public sector is responsible for about a fifth of all jobs in the U.S. In terms of economic growth, the greatest multipliers, the greatest impact from public investment is found in the areas of infrastructure and to some degree manufacturing as well. And so we should invest a great deal in those two sectors. However, precisely because they're capital intensive and very productive, they're not going to create great numbers of jobs, particularly for low-skilled people. So it seems to us that a serious economic growth and job creation program would combine much greater investment in infrastructure in an attempt to rebuild at least some of the U.S. manufacturing base with an expansion of the jobs that are growing anyway. Because of the severity of this crisis, we should consider a temporary reduction in the retirement age and also in lowering the Medicare eligibility age until 55, precisely in order to get people out of the workforce into early retirement who are unlikely to find significant jobs again. We need to have training that's appropriate. We have had a system in which young people as students have had to go into debt and to gamble that a particular job for which their credential is relevant will be around in 10 or 20 or 30 years after they graduate. That puts all of the risk on the individual. It makes more sense, I think, to subsidize not students, but businesses, but employers, to allow them to train people for the particular jobs, and also to retrain them at different stages in life. If you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics list of the jobs with the greatest absolute growth in the next 10 or 20 years, the vast majority of them require only a high school education plus some on-the-job training. In some cases, maybe 2 years of community college. So I think this idea that we need to send everybody to a 4-year liberal arts college, and then beyond that to get a professional degree while going deeply into debt really needs to be reconsidered, and maybe we should think about career-long training in which the responsibility for the training would be divided between the government and the employers who know what skills they want, rather than putting all of the responsibility on the individuals and their ability to guess what the world will be like in 20 or 30 years.